The lights inside the studio of The Late Show glowed warmly, and the audience roared with excitement as Stephen Colbert welcomed William Shatner to the stage. It felt like a homecoming. At 93 years old, Shatner still walked with confidence, waving and smiling as if nothing had changed since his days on Star Trek. The band played a playful, space-themed tune as he sat down across from Colbert. Colbert opened the conversation with lighthearted banter. They joked about aging, about Shatner's trip on Jeff Bezos' rocket, and about how science fiction had now become science fact. The audience laughed. Shatner, always quick with a one-liner, kept the crowd entertained. Fell easy, nostalgic like watching two old friends share stories over coffee. But then the energy began to shift. Colbert leaned slightly forward, resting his elbows on the desk. His smile remained, but his tone changed, more serious now, less playful. Shatner noticed it too. He blinked slowly, his grin stiffening just. "Slightly, Bill," Colbert said, choosing his words carefully. "You've had one of the most impressive careers in television history, no doubt about that. But with all that success, have you ever thought about what it might have cost others?" The room grew quiet. The band stopped. Even the audience, still smiling, seemed unsure whether to laugh or wait. Shatner raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure what you mean, Stephen." Colbert looked down at a stack of cue cards that hadn't been touched during the opening. He pulled one out, paused, and then continued. "There have been interviews, off-the-record comments. Some former co-stars, they've said your rise came while others were pushed aside. Silent, Stephen." Shatner's face didn't change, but the temperature in the room clearly had. He crossed one leg over the other, hands folded tightly now. "Stephen," he said slowly, "I've been in this business for over 7 decades. Someone has something to say, they should say it to my face, not whisper in corners." Colbert nodded but didn't back down. One former cast member who asked to remain unnamed said they were advised by producers not to challenge you publicly. That you had, in their words, connections beyond the set. A low murmur moved through the audience. Shatner shifted in his chair, his smile now gone. "You're reading from a script that someone gave you," he said sharply. "I'd love to know who handed you those cards." The studio lights seemed brighter now. The easy nostalgia had completely drained away. Colbert, still calm, didn't answer the question. "Instead," he said, "I'm just doing my job, Bill." Shatner looked out at the audience, then at the camera. For a brief moment, it seemed like he was about to laugh it all off. But something in his eyes had hardened. "You want truth?" Qui said quietly, his voice steady but cold. "Fine, but you better be ready for what comes next." Gasps echoed through the studio. Colbert looked surprised, perhaps even concerned. The production team in the background stood frozen. A camera light flickered for half a second. Then came statica. Glitch in the feed. Not long, just enough to notice. Shatner didn't wait. He took off his mic, placed it gently on the desk, stood up, and walked off stage. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Some did both. Colbert sat frozen in his seat, his cue cards untouched on the desk. The screen cut to commercial, but the internet didn't. Within minutes, hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag Shatner storms out. Hashtag Colbert exposed. Hashtag the truth next. And somewhere in a quiet apartment on the other side of the city, a young journalist replayed the clip for the third time. She leaned in, paused the screen right before the static flickered, and zoomed in on the expression in Shatner's eyes. It wasn't fear, it was warning. The clip had gone viral overnight. News outlets were running it on repeat. Social media flooded with hot takes, reaction videos, and speculation. Some called William Shatner a relic, unwilling to face criticism. Others called Colbert a snake for blindsiding a 93-year-old icon on national television. But one thing was, Certain whatever had just happened on The Late Show wasn't just awkward entertainment. It was a spark, and something bigger was catching fire. By morning, the New York Times ran a headline. Shatner hints at hidden truth. What comes next? Underneath a quote, "You better be ready for what comes next." The studio, meanwhile, went into damage control. CBS released a vague statement saying the show was committed to journalistic integrity and fostering honest conversations. Colbert didn't appear on his next episode. His chair was filled by a guest host, citing personal time. Behind the scenes, there were whispers, confused producers, nervous assistants, and a network executive who allegedly received a visit from someone with a badge but no name. Across town, Shatner was silent. Until he wasn't. At exactly 6 p.m., a tweet appeared on his account. Just 6 words. They wanted it quiet. Not now. It had no image, no link, no explanation, but within minutes, thousands of users began digging. What followed was chaos. Archived footage began circulating, old behind-the-scenes interviews from Star Trek. Throwaway comments from co-stars, even fan convention Q&As where a few actors had hinted that Shatner had protection in the industry. Some said he had powerful friends. Others suggested it went deeper: blackmail, sealed files, whispered threats. Most dismissed it as fan gossip. But now, in light of Colbert's question and Shatner's exit, it didn't feel like gossip anymore. Meanwhile, a young journalist named Maya Rahim was already 2 steps ahead. She'd recognized the flicker in the live feed just for a split. Second, before the screen went to commercial, she worked freelance, usually on cold cases and forgotten scandals. She had no formal newsroom, but she had a digital forensic toolkit and a very sharp eye. She rewound the clip again and again, slowing it frame by frame. There, just before the glitch, the angle caught Shatner's hand slipping something quickly under the desk. It looked like a flash drive, and Colbert didn't see it. But the stagehand walking behind him did. Maya's heart raced. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but it was something. She took a screenshot and posted it quietly on her Substack newsletter under the title, "The Shatner Shift: What Was Left Behind." She didn't expect more than a few clicks. But 10 minutes later, her inbox received a strange message. No subject, no name, just a single sentence. "You're on the right frequency, but not the right channel." Attached was a file. No text, just a soundbite. She played it. Grainy voice, clearly Shatner's, but recorded in secret. They think they own the story? Ah, they've forgotten I helped write the first draft. Maya froze. The timestamp was from a week ago, before the Colbert interview. Her hands shook as she replayed it. This wasn't just a feud between a celebrity and a talk show host. This was the beginning of something scripted long ago, and suddenly coming undone. Across the country, Colbert sat in a silent room at CBS headquarters. His phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered. The voice on the other end was cold, quiet, and precise. "You lost control of the narrative. Find the drive before she does." Click. Colbert looked around the room. He wasn't being warned. He was being watched. The studio lights in Colbert's office had been dimmed. He stared at the still frame frozen on his office monitor. Shatner mid-sentence, his hand slipping something beneath the desk. It hadn't aired, but the raw feed was different. It showed everything. And someone else had noticed it too. That damn freelancer. He'd read the newsletter that morning, The Shatner Shift: What Was Left Behind. It wasn't just clever writing, it was dangerously close to real. The door creaked. Behind him, Marissa, his longtime producer, entered with a file folder and a tight expression. "They want a statement," she said. Not sitting down. "You crossed a line, Stephen. I think you provoked him without clearance." Colbert didn't answer. His eyes didn't move from the screen. "He left something behind," he said slowly. Marissa shifted. "What?" He had it ready. He knew I'd ask. He wanted this to happen. Marissa sat now, quiet. "And the question is, why?" Meanwhile, across the river in a cluttered Brooklyn apartment, Maya Rahim worked furiously. At her desk, she'd enhanced the frame, stabilized the color, and now she could clearly see the flash drive, black, small, with a red insignia on the side. That insignia was no ordinary logo. She knew it from a 2018 federal leak involving private intelligence contractors Trident. Signal surveillance company accused of illegal domestic spying. Their files had vanished in a classified settlement. No one ever found out what happened. Until now, she stared at her screen, heart pounding. What would a retired actor be doing with a drive linked to a defunct shadow intelligence group? Then her second laptop beeped. An encrypted file had just arrived. No sender, no subject. Hesitated, then opened it. A blurry photograph appeared. A young William Shatner shaking hands with a man in a military uniform, face obscured. The background showed a hangar, Cold War-era U.S. flag. The metadata suggested 1974. Below the photo, a single phrase typed. In Courier font, Project Echo, 1974 to 2001. They erased the official record. But the satellites never forget. Maya felt a cold sweat on her spine. She reached for her phone to call her editor, but it buzzed before she could dial. Unknown number, she answered. You don't know what you're holding, the voice said. It wasn't threatening. It was regretful, older, familiar. I think I do, Maya said. You think this is about an actor losing his temper? No, it's about who got to write history on, who was paid to keep it edited. Who are you? There was a pause. Then, I was once the youngest agent on Echo. We tracked enemies, but our greatest threat came from within. And he, Shatner, was. Our public cover. Maya almost dropped the phone. You're saying I'm saying he wasn't just a face on television. He was part of the mechanism. And now he's the last one alive who knows where the full archive is. The line went dead. Back in the studio, Colbert's phone vibrated again. A new text, stagehand Rohaz the drive. Location pinged. Union Station, 5:22 p.m. Stephen stood up fast. Marissa, I need to leave. Where are you going? He didn't answer. At his eyes said everything. This was no. Longer about ratings. This was about secrets that had been buried for decades. And a man who had decided at 93 to unearth them on live television. And now others were racing to find the truth. Before someone else silenced it forever. Union Station buzzed with its usual chaos travelers dragging bags. Announcements echoing through the domed ceiling and the occasional clang of a vending machine returning change. But for Stephen Colbert, disguised under a baseball cap and sunglasses, it might as well have been a battlefield. He scanned the crowd. His phone vibrated. Eric Rowe, Platform 9B Northeast Corridor. Blue hoodie. Colbert moved fast, weaving past commuters. His mind raced. Eric was just a stagehand, one of the quiet, unnoticed crew who'd worked backstage for over a decade. But if he had the drive, who gave it to him? Why? And more importantly, was he being followed too? On Platform 9B, the Amtrak train hadn't arrived yet. A cluster of passengers stood idly with phones and coffee cups. Then Colbert saw him. Blue hoodie, nervous posture. Bag slung over one shoulder, hand gripped tightly to its strap. Stephen stepped closer. Eric. The man turned, eyes wide. What are you? I don't want trouble, just the drive. Eric shook his head fast. You don't understand that thing. I didn't ask for it. He slipped it in my bag right before he walked off. Said they won't stop with questions. Can make sure someone sees this. I didn't even check what it was. A whistle blew. The train rumbled into the platform. You can give it to me now, Colbert said. But Eric's eyes darted behind Stephen. We're not alone. Two men in black coats had just entered the platform. They didn't look around. They walked directly toward them. Run, Colbert muttered. They sprinted, Colbert's heart pounding, Eric panting beside him. They ducked into the train's last car just as the door shut. From the window, Stephen watched the men in black slow. One of them raised a phone, not to call, to scan. Facial recognition, Stephen whispered. They already know. Train pulled out of the station. 30 minutes later, deep in the moving train, Eric finally pulled the drive from his bag. This better be worth it, he said, passing it over. Stephen connected it to his laptop, fingers shaking. A folder popped open. Echo Archive 1974 to 2001 inside. Over 100 encrypted files. GPS logs, audio recordings. Surveillance photos, names, maps, memos, and something else. Project Scepter Media Integration Report. Phase 4, Colbert clicked. The screen filled with scanned documents. At first they looked like technical briefings, charts, and memos from the 1980s. But the names stood out. Famous ones. Broadcast journalists, anchors, script notes from national news. Segments that had supposedly aired live but had been pre-written, pre-cleared. Tire storylines constructed not by producers, but by contractors working for Echo. And in the corner of every page, a watermark. TSI Department. 53 per clearance. Zulu. Stephen leaned back. This is proof, he whispered. They weren't just influencing news. They were producing it. Eric said nothing. He just stared at the train window, pale. Then a voice crackled over. The PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a security alert, we'll be making an unscheduled stop in Newark. Please remain seated. Stephen froze. Eric met his eyes. They're already here. 10 minutes later, the train slowed. Outside the window, 2 black SUVs waited. Not police. No insignia. Stephen slammed the laptop shut. We need to disappear now. They slipped out the opposite door into. The maintenance corridor beside the tracks smelled like oil and steel. They climbed down the ladder and into the shadows, running between train cars, ducking under floodlights. Behind them, boots hit metal. Voices barked in short, trained commands. But Stephen held the drive tight in his coat pocket. And as they vanished into the New Jersey night, one thought burned in his mind. William Shatner hadn't exploded on live TV because of pride or ego. He had used Colbert's staged national television to trigger the exposure of one of the most secret media operations in American history. And the show was only just beginning. A cold drizzle painted the New Jersey streets in silver as Colbert and Eric ducked into a shuttered hardware store near the edge of the rail yard. It was long abandoned, its windows cracked, shelves dust-covered. But it was shelter for now. Stephen paced near the back, his breath visible in the stale air. Eric sat on an overturned bucket, still trying to process everything. Colbert pulled out the flash drive again and connected it to the laptop. This time using a VPN shield he'd installed for emergencies. His fingers typed fast, eyes darting through the folders. One file caught his eye. Internal memo, Operation Line Cut, minus 1,997. He opened it. Inside was a scanned letter from the Department of Cultural Strategy, a name Colbert had never heard before, addressed to a senior producer at NBC. The memo outlined how certain broadcast segments were to be pre-cleared for national cohesion, using talking points directly handed down by Echo operatives embedded within media outlets. The memo listed specific anchors. Some were retired. One had mysteriously vanished in 2002, and another was still working. Eric leaned over. Look at that line. If Shatner fails to contain the Phase 4 narrative, pre-authorize use of Protocol Blackroom via Colbert as fallback entry. Stephen's blood ran cold. Fallback entry? He whispered. Eric blinked. They were going to use you. The realization hit him like a punch. He had been chosen as a controlled variable, one the public already trusted. Echo never intended to fully silence Shatner. They had hoped Shatner would trigger a reaction, one that could be monitored and redirected by Colbert's platform. But something went wrong. Shatner had flipped the script. He hadn't just hinted at Echo's manipulation. He had decided to burn the curtain down. And now Colbert unknowingly had broadcast the spark. A sudden buzz on the laptop. Incoming message. Anon_terminal 45. Stephen hesitated, then opened it. A text-only window filled the screen. They'll erase us both if this hits air. But there's another file. It's the one even Shatner never saw. Scepter V, look deeper. J. Eric said. Who the hell is J? Stephen didn't. Answer? He dug deeper through the drive, bypassing encrypted folders until he found one buried beneath layers of code. Scepter V password protected. He stared at the blinking cursor. What's the password? Eric asked. Colbert thought for a moment and typed Kirk Lives. The folder opened. It's a single video file. Grainy. Dated July 10th, 2004. They hit play. Screen showed a small, sterile room. One camera. It's two people. Sitting at a table, one was clearly younger William Shatner. His hair grayer than usual, face calm. The other woman in a military uniform, name tag blurred. Shatner spoke first. I told your people before. I'll go on air. I'll play my part. But I won't lie about what happened in Syria. Not after what we saw. The woman's voice was clipped. No one's asking you to lie. Just avoid the timing. Focus on character, not chronology. But they killed journalists, Shatner snapped. I was there. I saw it happen. Then I watched CNN run a piece on the same region 48 hours later, with footage we filmed but scrubbed clean. The woman looked straight into the camera. We own the timeline. Mr. Shatner, you were briefed on that when you signed on to Echo. Shatner leaned forward. I was told I was helping shape culture, not burying truth. You people turned it into a psyop. Silence, then static. The video cut out. The room was quiet. Eric sat stunned. He knew. All this time, he knew. And he waited. Colbert's voice was barely a whisper. He waited until the world stopped listening, then chose my show to make it impossible to ignore. The laptop beeped again. Anon_terminal 45, they're closing in. Upload to ONYX. Server, password, Kirk Lives. Make it public. Or vanish like the others. Footsteps echoed outside. Car doors slammed. Tires crunched on wet pavement. Stephen grabbed the laptop, yanked the drive. He looked at Eric. You ready? Eric nodded. Let's finish what he started. They slipped out the back door as lights filled the street. Their next stop wasn't a newsroom. It was the ONYX server, Hub Deep, beneath a shell company in Midtown Manhattan. Their only shot at uploading the truth before the blackout agents caught up. And as they ran, Stephen knew this wasn't about Shatner anymore. It was about a generation manipulated through screens, laughing while being rewritten, trusting what they were told was entertainment when all along it was control. The elevator clanked downward into silence, deep below the Manhattan skyline. Stephen Colbert and Eric held their breath as the steel box descended beneath a derelict courier. Building off 47th Street's true purpose hidden for over 2 decades. The ONYX server hub. The walls down here were concrete and thick, covered in peeling white paint and exposed pipes. Every footstep echoed. Power hummed low beneath the floor, the kind of hum that vibrated in your teeth. This used to be part of an AT&T signal relay center, Eric muttered. Before Echo repurposed it, Colbert adjusted the strap on his shoulder bag, the flash drive inside, and this ONYX server. It's not just a server, Eric said, it's a gate. Once we upload to it, the algorithm built into ONYX duplicates the file mirrors. It across every academic node, peer-to-peer archive, and ex-government research database it can find. Thousands of points. It can't be deleted once it begins. Colbert nodded. So once it's up, it's everywhere. They reached a wide vault door at the end of the corridor. A retinal scanner blinked red on the wall. Eric stepped forward and leaned in. A click, then a hiss of hydraulics. The door slid open. Inside was a sterile chamber. Racks of glowing servers stood like silent sentinels. A single glass desk in the center, and sitting at it was a woman in a long gray coat, her back turned. Stephen froze. Who the hell? The woman turned slowly. It was the same woman from the 2004 video, the Echo liaison. Only now her hair was completely white. Her face calm, familiar. "Good evening, Mr. Colbert," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Been a long time since your Daily Show days. You've always had a nose for moments like this." Stephen stepped cautiously inside. Eric stayed by the door. "Is this where you tell me I've misunderstood everything?" Colbert asked. This isn't what it looks like." The woman smiled faintly. "Oh no, you understand exactly what this is. But the problem isn't understanding. The problem is timing." She turned the monitor toward them. On the screen was a map of digital nodes lighting up across the U.S. academic servers. Online archives, university FTPs. "I know what you're about to do. Upload Scepter V. Expose the Operation Line Cut protocols. Out Shatner as a failed cultural disruptor who went rogue. Paint Echo as a weaponized propaganda network disguised in nostalgia and entertainment." Stephen stared at the screen. "Isn't that what you've done?" The woman tilted her head. "We did nothing you didn't let us do. We offered comfort, icons, familiarity. All you had to do was laugh. And you did every night, every show for 30 years. Eric stepped forward. "You gaslit an entire generation." She looked at him calmly. "No, we calibrated them." A beat of silence. Then Stephen said, "We're uploading the truth now." She sighed, rising from her chair. "That's the thing, Mr. Colbert. The upload's already begun. You plugged in the drive the moment you walked into this room. The system's intelligent. It recognized you." Stephen's eyes widened. "So it's out." She gave a half nod. "The first nodes have already lit up. But we still have a choice." She reached under the table and placed a single red device. On the desk, a sleek cube, no markings. This is a pulse suppressor. One key press and the signal scrambles. The data's fractured across 100 dead ends. The story dies. Eric shook his head. "So what? You're offering us a deal. Why?" She looked directly at Stephen. "'Cause if this goes out, every media personality, every name connected to Echohaven, the ones who didn't know will be implicated. That includes you, Stephen. Your face, your voice, your credibility, your entire legacy." Colbert didn't blink. William Shatner risked everything because he believed legacy meant nothing if truth was lost. "I get that now." He looked at Eric, then back at her. "I'll take my chances." She stood still. The cube sat untouched. The server screen behind them flashed. Upload complete. The map now burned with light. Thousands of nodes, millions of data streams. And just like that, the world had changed. The woman picked up the cube slowly and slid it into her pocket. "You've made your choice," she said. "Now the world makes theirs, as Colbert." And Eric turned to leave. Alarms began to sound in the distance, sirens, panicked footsteps. Somewhere above ground, institutions were collapsing. Networks were scrambling. Narratives were unraveling. But in that chamber, there was only quiet. Until Colbert looked back one last time. "What was your name?" he asked. The woman smiled faintly. "Janice. I used to work for CBS." The vault door hissed shut behind them. The storm outside had broken into thunder now. And across the world, headlines would soon explode. Shatner's secret files leak was Hollywood affront for state. Ops Echo exposed. Decades of hidden agendas under entertainment banner, late night, fake night. But Stephen didn't care about the headlines anymore. He just hoped the truth would be enough. The rain had started by the time Stephen Colbert stepped out into the street. Not the soft cinematic kind, but a real storm, the kind that soaked through your collar in seconds and made everything feel heavier. His coat clung to him. His shoes squeaked with every step. But he walked forward, steady. News vans were already circling Midtown like vultures. A drone buzzed overhead. On a nearby screen, the emergency broadcast banner flashed. System leak. Unconfirmed intel exposure. Stand by for government response. Stephen's phone was vibrating nonstop in his pocket. He didn't bother to check it. He knew what the messages would say. His name was everywhere. He turned the corner toward a side alley where a black sedan waited with its engine idling. Eric sat inside, staring blankly ahead, soaked like him. No turning back now, Eric muttered as Stephen got in. There never was, Colbert said quietly. As the car pulled away, they passed a massive LED display showing a paused clip of William Shatner's face, his final words echoing from the broadcast now spliced into every media cycle. You wanted truth? You got it. Now hold on tight. And the world was. Across continents, government departments were in damage control. Officials denied involvement. Retired celebrities fled to Europe. Influencers scrambled to distance themselves. Tech giants faced mass boycotts. Streaming platforms pulled dozens of titles overnight for review. But the files had spread too far, too fast. What the ONYX network released was more than a confession. It was blueprint. Proof that shows like The Tonight Show, Live with Kelly, and even select Emmy broadcasts had been used as calibration tools, subtle psychological programming under the guise of entertainment. Guests were curated. Questings were rehearsed. Reactions were measured by real-time data feeds linked to behavioral labs in Virginia and Brussels. And Shatner was a reluctant participant. A hero not by design, but by breaking point. The documents included transcripts, years of off-air moments, inner conversations, threats, and confessions from studio lots. Some were damning, others tragic. A 2006 memo from the Office of Cultural Strategy. Utilize trusted icons. Build illusion of free thought. The public doesn't want truth. They want a reflection of themselves. Give them one, nightly. Stephen closed his eyes as the car cruised silently down the FDR. He remembered hosting comedy bits about corruption, using sarcasm as a sword, unaware that he himself had been wielded. A soft chime from the dashboard broke the silence. An alert. Security briefing. White House to address ONYX fallout in 30 minutes. Eric looked over. Do you think they'll tell the full truth? Stephen's voice was tired. No, but enough of it will already be out there. The rest doesn't belong to them anymore. They pulled into a small underground garage. As the gate closed behind them, a flash of lights blinded them to independent journalists, soaked and panting, waiting in the shadows. One of them shouted, Mr. Colbert, did you know the Echo Network was active during your tenure at Comedy Central? Were you involved? He didn't answer. He just held up his hand. In it, the original flash drive. Think he walked into the garage without saying a word. Upstairs, a temporary studio had been set up by an international consortium of independent media. Clean desk, bare walls, no ads, no audience, just a mic. Stephen sat down, adjusted the headset, looked into the lens. A countdown began. 3, 2, 1. And then the world saw him again. No jokes, no satire, no character. Just a man who had helped deliver the most dangerous truth in modern media history. He spoke clearly without blinking. This isn't about one show or one face or one actor. This was a system. Told us what to laugh at, who to believe, and when to stop asking questions. Tonight, you decide if you still want to play along, or if you're ready to ask your own. And then silence. The broadcast cut to black. No credits, no outro music. Only a ticker scrolling below the screen, now visible on every news channel. The ONYX files are public. Download, archive. Read carefully. In a small cafe in Berlin, a group of young students watched. In Snow Paulo, a retired journalist burst into tears. In Texas, Jasmine Crockett sat upright in her living room and whispered, finally. And in a quiet apartment in Los Angeles, William Shatner watched from his chair, a single light above him, smiled. Not because he was proud, but because, finally, the curtain had fallen. And no one was clapping.